Every year, out of the middle of the United States, something extraordinary comes out of the ground. Not oil, not steel, corn. Nearly 15 billion bushels in a single season. Most of it will never be eaten as corn. It will feed animals, fuel engines, supply factories, and travel across the world. This is not simply agriculture. It is a continental machine. How America grows a third of the world's corn. I'm Dale Miller, and this is the production map. When Americans think about corn, this is what they picture. Sweet corn on the cob. That corn is a rounding error. Less than 0.4% of American corn acres. Almost everything you're about to see is a different plant. It's called field corn, hard, starchy, inedible off the cob. It is grown to be processed. In 2024, American farmers planted about 91 million acres of it, an area nearly the size of Montana under a single crop. That season, the United States grew close to a third of all the corn on Earth. And a third of the American crop came from just 2 states, Iowa and Illinois. So how does one plant end up occupying that much of a continent? One quick note before we continue. Videos like this take many hours of research, writing, and production. The best way to support the channel is simply to subscribe. It really helps, and I truly appreciate it. The place has a name, the Corn Belt. But it has no official border. The USDA's own maps don't draw one. It isn't really a region. It's a place where 4 advantages happen to overlap. The first one is underneath. This was tall grass prairie. Prairie grasses grow most of their mass below the ground, roots growing, dying, and decaying in place year after year for thousands of years. That built one of the deepest, darkest, richest agricultural soils on the planet. The second is the shape of the land. Ice made it. The last glaciers pushed into the upper Midwest and pulled back, and what they left behind was flat. Flat matters, because flat is what lets machines get bigger. And in this story, machines getting bigger is the whole plot. The third is the weather. Corn needs heat and water at the same time, and it needs them in midsummer, the hottest, driest part of most temperate climates. The American Midwest is one of the few places on Earth that delivers both in the same months. And the fourth is what this region doesn't need. Most of the Corn Belt is rain-fed. No pumps, no pivots, no aquifer. The water falls out of the sky. That is what makes it cheap. Nature built the potential. All 4 of those things were here before anyone grew corn for a market. It took a century of potential to turn that potential into an industry. For most of American history, corn came off the stalk 1 ear at a time, by hand. Farm records from central Illinois in the 1850s put it at about 15 hours of labor to pick and husk a single acre. The USDA later described the season plainly. Hand harvest ran from the middle of October to the middle of December. 2 months of work to bring in 1 crop. The limit on an American farm was never the land. It was how much a family and a team of horses could physically get through. In 1920, there were more than 25 million horses and mules working on American farms. and about 246,000 tractors. By 1959, there were 4.5 million tractors. And the horses were gone. The corn picker followed. By 1954, there were 676,000 of them, and 70% were concentrated right here. The USDA's own figure: a single-row picker could take in 200 acres in a season. 200 acres. 3,000 hours of hand labor replaced by one machine. But machinery is not what explains this. From 1866 to the mid-1930s, American corn yields did not improve. 70 years, flat, at around 25 bushels an acre. Then the line bends. Hybrid corn. In Iowa, a plant breeder named Henry Wallace helped turn it from an experiment into an industry. Within 10 years, hybrids went from almost nothing to nearly every acre in the state. Then synthetic nitrogen after the Second World War. Then genetic engineering in the 1990s. Then satellite guidance and yield monitors. Every one of them stacked on top of the one before it. In the 1930s, an average American acre produced about 24 bushels of corn. In 2024, it produced 179. 7 times as much corn from the same acre. Start in April. Planting is a race against temperature and rain. Too early, and the seed sits in cold ground. Too late, and you lose growing days off the end of the season. The window can be 2 weeks wide. A wet spring can close it. Then the crop grows, and for 2 months there is almost nothing anyone can do about it. The decisive moment comes in July. The tassel sheds pollen. The silks catch it. Each successful silk becomes one kernel. It lasts about a week, and it happens at the hottest, thirstiest point of the year. Heat and drought in that week don't slow the crop down. They remove kernels that will never exist. There is no getting them back in August. By late September, the plant is dead and drying. And harvest is not a date. It's a moisture number. Cut too wet, and you pay to dry it. Cut too dry, and you shell kernels onto the ground. Then it has to go somewhere. Almost none of this crop is sold the day it leaves the field. The bins on the farm and the elevator in town are what let a grower sell in February instead of October. And even a record yield doesn't guarantee a profit. Corn farming runs on enormous costs and very narrow margins. In the 2024-25 marketing year, just over 15 billion bushels of American corn were used. It went 4 ways. 36% went to animal feed. 36% went to ethanol. That is not a rounding coincidence. In 2024-25, feed use and ethanol use came within about 1 million bushels of each other, out of more than 5 billion each. America grows almost exactly as much corn to fuel engines as it does to feed animals. But that number changes meaning the moment you look closer. A bushel of corn weighs 56 pounds. An ethanol plant gets about 3 gallons of fuel out of it, and about 15 pounds of distiller's grains, which goes straight back into the animal feed supply. Roughly a quarter to a third of every bushel sent to an ethanol plant comes back out as feed. The starch becomes fuel. The protein returns. The third stream is the one most people assume is the biggest. and it's the smallest. Sweeteners, starch, cooking oil, cereal, industrial alcohol. Everything Americans actually eat or drink that comes from corn adds up to roughly 1 bushel in 13. And the fourth stream, 19%, left the country entirely. This is what the whole system looks like on the ground. Nevada, Iowa. Population 7,000. A grain elevator. A Union Pacific main line. Highway 30. And 2 ethanol plants. One was built by local farmers during the ethanol boom to buy their own corn. The other was built to make fuel out of corn stalks instead of kernels, failed, and was rebuilt by a different company for a different purpose. That's a corn town. Farms feeding storage, storage feeding rail and fuel production, all inside one local network a few miles across. There are hundreds of them, and every one of them has the same problem. 19% of this crop has to leave the country. And the country is very large. The first leg is a truck, farm to elevator or farm to plant, rarely more than a couple hundred miles. The export leg is a different machine entirely. For corn headed overseas, rail and barge split the job almost evenly. Rail is how you reach a coast or a border, west to the Pacific, south into Mexico. Barge is how you reach the Gulf. In 2022, barge moved 48% of American corn export tonnage. One 15-barge tow on the Mississippi carries 22,500 tons of grain. The USDA's own equivalents? 225 rail hopper cars, or 866 trucks. One tow, 866 trucks. America's advantage is not only that it can grow corn cheaply, it can move it cheaply. And then it stops being American. In 2024-25, the United States exported a record, nearly 2.9 billion bushels of corn. Just over a third of it went to one country, Mexico. And China took essentially nothing. 4 years earlier, China had been the largest single buyer of American corn in history, nearly a third of everything the United States shipped. Then it stopped. And the remarkable part is what happened next. America set an all-time export record anyway, without them. China didn't stop importing corn. It bought somewhere else. Because over the last decade, Brazil built a second corn crop, planted in January after the soybeans come off the same ground, harvested in the middle of the year. It's now about 3/4 of Brazilian corn production. And it arrives on the world market in exactly the months when the American crop isn't there. In 2022-23, Brazil passed the United States and became the world's largest corn exporter. America took the position back the following year. It's not a permanent title, it's a market share, and market shares move. So, how secure is any of this? The machine is powerful. It is not invulnerable. A week of heat in the wrong week can take the crop. In 2012, drought and heat during pollination cut the national yield more than 40 bushels an acre below where it should have been. on the largest planted area in 75 years. A shallow river can raise the cost of everything. The Mississippi has run low 4 years running. When it does, tows get smaller, freight gets more expensive, and the cheapest transport system in world agriculture stops being cheap. And another country can take the market. That has already happened once. Start again at the bottom. 1 kernel. 56 pounds of them make a bushel. Nearly 15 billion bushels make an American crop. Pull back, and it's a farm, running on narrow margins and 1 week in July. Pull back again, and it's a town of 7,000 people with an elevator, a rail line, and 2 ethanol plants. Again, and it's the Corn Belt. Deep prairie soil, flat glacial ground, summers that deliver heat and rain in the same months. Again, and it's barges and shuttle trains and terminals on the Gulf. And once more, and it's a world market where the largest customer can vanish in a single year. America does not grow this much corn simply because it has good land. Plenty of countries have good land. It grows this much because an entire continental system was built on top of that land. 1 machine, 1 town, 1 railway, and 1 river at a time. 1 crop. 90 million acres. And a machine that reaches far beyond the farm. If you've made it this far, thank you. It tells me we're doing something right. Please remember to subscribe. It makes a real difference and helps keep this channel growing. I'm Dale Miller, and this is the Production Map. I'll see you in the next episode.